If you're curious about water kefir, you're in the right place. Today I'm answering the most frequently asked questions I get about making and enjoying this delicious probiotic drink. Whether you're a total beginner or you've tried it before and had questions, here are the answers. I'll start with the basics, get into the details, and we'll even tell you some of the health benefits at the end. All the chapters are listed in the description box below, so feel free to skip around. How do you pronounce this? The two most common variations are kefir, the traditional pronunciation, and kefir, the American pronunciation. Either is completely acceptable, so pick your pronunciation and own it. What is water kefir? Water kefir is a fermented beverage made with water kefir grains, sugar, and water. It's naturally bubbly, at least a little bit, and full of beneficial bacteria and yeast, kind of like a probiotic soda. What are water kefir grains? They're not grains like wheat or rice. They're actually little colonies of bacteria and yeast that feed on sugar and in turn produce probiotics, acids, and carbonation. They look like little clearish gummies. What's the difference between water kefir and milk kefir? Water kefir grains are translucent and milk kefir grains are white. They're both rubbery, but have somewhat of a different texture. They're composed of different strains of bacteria and yeasts suited to fermenting their specific liquids, water versus milk. Water kefir has fewer strains than milk kefir, but it still offers billions of beneficial microbes, both yeasts and bacteria that support gut health. Plus, it's a great dairy-free option if you're looking for that. Is it alcoholic? Water kefir does contain a very small amount of alcohol, usually less than 1%. It's a natural byproduct of fermentation. Think the amount of alcohol in overripe fruit. For most people, these trace levels are not intoxicating and are considered completely non-alcoholic. It's safe for most people, including kids, but if you're sensitive, always double check or limit fermentation time. Less fermentation, less alcohol is produced. Do I need to use filtered water? No. And in fact, if you use filtered water that has been completely filtered of all minerals, your kefir grains may not thrive. Kefir grains actually do best in mineral-rich water, like mineral or spring water. Well water is also great. I personally use filtered water that hasn't been filtered of the beneficial minerals. And conversely, distilled and reverse osmosis water aren't great options unless you add minerals back in. Can I use tap water? Yes, just leave it out for 24 hours or boil it for 20 minutes to get rid of the chlorine. This does not remove chloramine, however, if your water contains that. What kind of sugar should I use? Organic cane sugar is my personal favorite, and it's just a great middle ground option if you don't want to get complicated. Kefir grains are all different. Your grains may contain different microbes than mine, for example, and can even evolve over time. They may like one sugar in the summer and another better in the winter. So you may need to experiment. If you see any of these names of sugars, they are all possible options, but that doesn't mean they should be used alone or in large amounts. I'll get to that more in a second. Can I use regular white table sugar? It's totally fine with a caveat. It's a great source of sucrose that the bacteria and yeast can easily break down. However, it's been refined, which removes the minerals, which, as I mentioned before, the grains need to stay healthy and strong long term. So if using white sugar, combine it with another source of sugar, or even a little bit of dried fruit, maybe some medjool dates, or a pinch of molasses, or even a little bit of baking soda for minerals. How much molasses can I use? Remember when I said you can use these sugars, but not all alone or in large amounts? Here's more on that. Molasses is the opposite of the refined table sugar we just talked about. It's full of minerals, and this can actually overwhelm your kefir grains and slow fermentation too much, thus weakening your grains. So use molasses in small amounts, like a little pinch. If you need numbers, maybe 1/4 to a 1/2 teaspoon per quart or liter of water kefir. Combine this with white sugar or a mix of white or raw sugar. That can also be a great way. Or just use it once every few batches as a mineral boost. Again, play around with this. There's no exact science. And this goes for some of the other more mineral-rich sugars on the list, like maple syrup, for example. What about honey? I personally would avoid honey because it's antimicrobial. Can I feed my grains natural or artificial sweeteners? These sugars are just not fermentable by these microbes, so you're not going to be able to feed your grains. Can I feed my grains less sugar to reduce the sugar content of my beverage? No, don't gyp your grains of the sugar they need. This will only hurt them. Sugar is primarily food for the microbes, not you. So if you want to reduce the sugar content, just ferment a little longer, consume in smaller quantities, or dilute with water when you're ready to drink. What if I'm diabetic? You ultimately have to test your own blood sugar to determine how it responds after drinking water kefir. However, some may tolerate it. During fermentation, bacteria and yeasts feed on the sugars in the liquid, converting them into acids, gases, and a small amount of alcohol. This process lowers the total sugar content, which in turn reduces the glycemic load, meaning it causes a slower, smaller rise in blood sugar when consumed. How much of everything do I use? You can totally wing it like I do and just put what you think will work. That's just my style. But if it's not yours, a good guideline is 1 tablespoon of grains per 1 tablespoon of sugar per 1 cup of water. So for me, I typically use a jar that holds 4 cups of water, aka a quart. So I would use 4 tablespoons of grain, aka a 4th cup, and 4 tablespoons of sugar, aka a 4th cup. How long does it take to ferment? Usually 24 to 48 hours for the first fermentation. The warmer your home, the faster it ferments. You can then do a second fermentation to carbonate it more. What is a second fermentation? Once you've fermented your kefir grains for 24 to 48 hours, you've completed the first fermentation. You then strain the liquid, it's ready for drinking and will be absolutely delicious. However, it's not going to be super bubbly and fizzy. So you can take this liquid and give it more sugar to feed on in the form of juice or even just some fresh fruit or maybe a combination of fresh fruit and sugar. Then you leave this in a tightly sealed bottle of some sort at room temperature for another 24 to 48 hours. Make sure to burp daily to relieve the pressure and avoid explosions. You will then have a super bubbly probiotic soda. How do I flavor it? As mentioned, you can do a second fermentation, but if you don't care about a lot of bubbles, after straining out the grains, you can add whatever your heart desires to flavor and then stick it in the fridge. I love to just squeeze in some lemon juice personally, but people add a little bit of juice, fruit, herbs, tea, make sure it's cold. What temperature does kefir prefer? In general, mid 60s to lower 80s. Do I need to refrigerate it? Yes. Once it's flavored and fizzy to your liking, if you did a second ferment, pop it in the fridge. This slows fermentation and keeps it from turning too sour or alcoholic tasting. Can I heat it? No, this kills your probiotics, which is pretty much the point. How do I store the grains if I'm taking a break? Put them in their usual sugar water in the fridge and cover them with a lid. I don't screw my lid on really tight. Replace the sugar water every 2 to 3 weeks and place right back into the refrigerator. For longer breaks, you can dehydrate them or freeze them, but they may need a little bit of time to bounce back. What about when I'm ready to use the grains again? Simply take your grains out of the refrigerator, strain, and feed them with fresh sugar and water. Do I have to worry about contaminants? Luckily, water kefir is very safe when made properly. The symbiotic mix of bacteria and yeasts in the grains naturally helps protect against harmful microbes like mold and pathogens. Studies have even shown that kefir can inhibit dangerous bacteria such as E. coli, salmonella, and even H. pylori. Is it safe for kids, pregnant women, or people with gut issues? Water kefir is generally safe, yes, and beneficial. However, you might need to start with small amounts, and of course, if you have a special health condition, you can always check with your healthcare provider to be safe. What are the health benefits? Water kefir is rich in probiotics. It contains lactic acid bacteria and yeasts that can diversify your gut microbiome. Why is that important? Studies have shown a diverse microbiome is linked to better digestion, immunity, and even mood, among other things. And did you know the good yeasts in kefir can also compete with bad yeasts, such as pathogenic Candida strains, to keep yeast overgrowth in the gut in check? And some strains in water kefir produce short-chain fatty acids or substances that may help strengthen the gut lining and reduce leaky gut. What if I have SIBO or histamine intolerance? intolerance. If you have these conditions, you might not tolerate water kefir right away, but that doesn't necessarily mean water kefir is bad. It just means your gut might not be ready yet. SIBO involves an overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine where they don't belong, and even beneficial bacteria, like those in water kefir, can contribute to bloating, gas, or discomfort if you're already overloaded in the wrong place. This just means you might need to go slowly or even avoid it until the underlying overgrowth is addressed. Same thing if your body is struggling to break down histamine. You might have negative symptoms when introducing kefir. Not because the kefir is inherently bad, your histamine bucket is just full. And I think that's the misconception when fermented foods in general aren't tolerated. Going for long walks might not be great for you if you have a newly broken leg, but that doesn't mean long walks are bad. You just need to heal some first for those long walks to then be beneficial. What strains of bacteria and yeast are found in water kefir? Here's just one of several studies on the exact strains, but they can vary depending on the source of grains, environmental factors. Here are some of the most common, according to one study that analyzed 3 different water kefirs from 3 different origins, just to give you an idea, although there are many, many more that I don't have listed here. Why not just take a probiotic supplement? Unlike most probiotic supplements, which typically contain only a few isolated strains, kefir provides many. And kefir offers more than just probiotics. It's a whole food that delivers enzymes, vitamins, minerals, the whole package in an easily digestible form. See, here's the thing. Whole fermented foods like this have a nice food matrix. This just can't be replicated in a capsule. And that is why I always say, remember to eat real food. And P.S., if you want to actually see me use my water kefir grains, I'll have that video linked for you below. See you next time.